Before diving into the chapter, I want to mention two important things. First, while Viz's translation of Hunter x Hunter chapters is generally good, its biggest flaw is condensing the dialogue. There's a famous story about Togashi getting upset when an editor changed just one word in his script, so shortening the Succession War arc's dialogues is a major offense in his eyes. Second, as I mentioned in my first video, I'm a content creator on another non-English channel and use AI to express my thoughts, so I hope you understand if the pronunciation is different. Let's get started. In Chapter 341, when the Zodiacs were shocked by the news of Kakin's journey to the Dark Continent, organized by Beyond, Gyro the Snake said something extremely important. Beyond has been preparing for this journey for decades, and the race is far from fair. Beyond's starting line is far ahead of ours. When I read this, I knew Beyond had a bigger plan, one that he's been preparing for over 50 years, ever since the last trip to the Dark Continent. But this was only about reaching the Dark Continent. In my mind, Beyond was just someone who saw the ship, Kakin, the Succession War, and the princes as mere means of transportation towards his goal. But after this chapter, I realized Beyond is deeper, smarter, and more powerful than I initially thought. Togashi's writing soars far above the rest of the authors. I can only say that this chapter is one of the best I've read in the last 5 years. I'm sure many watching this video share the same perspective. From the beginning, this chapter was full of shocking events, making us applaud Togashi and marvel at his brilliance. Just a dialogue between two characters in a closed room gave us all these incredible developments. Who would have guessed that the image of Catch the Forbidden meant Beyond was hunting within the Kakin state? I'm Psycho, and this is perhaps the best analysis of Chapter 401 you'll find on YouTube. I won't ask for likes or subscriptions, just sit back, focus, and enjoy Togashi's masterpiece. To begin, it's impossible to explain this chapter without recalling some important details first. First, Kurapika has found himself in a weak position since entering the ship due to two things: a lack of information about the other princes and their guards, and a shortage of manpower since most of the guards protecting him were actually spies. Because of this, Kurapika decided to create a stalemate in the war by making the lower-ranking princes stronger by teaching them Nen through lessons in his room. And due to certain events, Kurapika managed to succeed in this, forming alliances with the third prince, the fifth princess, and to some extent, the ninth prince. In Chapter 400, we saw the future meeting between Kurapika and Longi, the guard of the fifth princess. At the time, we didn't understand the meaning of their conversation. It was unclear. But in this chapter, Togashi takes us back to the start of their talk and clarifies everything. Secondly, the first prince's guard, Bavimnia, despite being under Benjamin's service, softened his attitude towards Kurapika and the queen after the death of Princess Momose and Queen Oito's reaction, even though Oito isn't the mother of the victim. I believe this chapter revealed the reason for this change. Finally, we remember the third prince paid a brief visit to the head of the Shuwu family, who supports him, to gain information about Nen, which was becoming widespread on the ship. As he left, he said, "Goodbye, father," despite being the son of Nasubi Huigoro. Now, let's begin explaining the events of Chapter 401. As mentioned earlier, Kurapika is trying to create a stalemate in the Succession War by teaching Nen to the lower-ranking prince's retinues. We've already seen Kurapika teaching one of the maids, and then Mawa, the head of the fifth princess's guards. Now it's Longi's turn, as she's also a guard of the fifth princess. Before Longi entered the room, we saw Yorkov make a shocking comment. "Finally, it's your turn, Master of Stealth. Let's see what you do." This comment surprised us at first, as it implies that Longi is the owner of the silent majority ability. We recall that Yorkov has a special way of determining whether someone is a Nen user. He determined that a silent majority user is 1 in 4 people. We already know 3 people: the maid who saw the silent majority puppet, and Prince Halkenberg's 2 guards because of their partial Nen awakening. The last person, Yorkov believes, is Longi. However, it turned out that she was not the user of the silent majority. When she entered the room, she immediately recognized herself as a Nen user, but made it clear that she did not have the silent majority ability. She provided evidence and explained why she had come. The proof she gave Kurapika was the demonstration and explanation of her ability, and since it differed from the silent majority, this was strong evidence of her sincerity. Longi explained her ability called Moon Eye Decree, a type of manipulation that requires a temporary contract. We learned that manipulation abilities are categorized into 3 types: full domination, like Illumi, which completely controls the victim's body, mind, and will; partial domination, where the user restrains the target's body without removing their will; appropriation, where the target's decision is not taken but is manipulated in favor of the user. In this chapter, we are introduced to a new type called conditioning, where a condition must be met to activate the ability, which Longi will use on Kurapika. She asks Kurapika to listen to her explanation before making a decision, as his signature is a condition to activate her ability. Kurapika asks about the terms of the contract, and Longi replies that it's a truce with the fifth princess, Tobiba, who works for her. Interestingly, not even Tobiba is aware of this ability, or that Longi uses Nen. Longi further adds that the contract will act as a guarantee for the real plan, sparking curiosity about this real plan. Kurapika, wary of all the new information and vagueness, activates Nen and uses his chain to detect lies, pointing his gun at Longi, warning her that any lie will result in him shooting. Longi responds that his threat is pointless for two reasons. First, because she's a Nen user and won't die from a .22 caliber bullet, and second, her ability comes with restrictions and vows that force her to explain the contract honestly. She insists she wants to help Kurapika by giving him more power for the real plan. Kurapika presses her on what the real plan is, and Longi hesitates, implying the weight of what she's about to reveal. She finally begins by explaining what she previously thought was the real plan before moving on to the new plan she's been alluding to. At this point, the readers are shrouded in mystery and confusion, awaiting one of the arc's biggest shocks. The first revelation Longi gives is her admission that she is Beyond's biological daughter, stunning both us and Kurapika, as well as Bill. Longi continues, explaining that about 30 years ago, Beyond recruited young Kakin officers and arranged fake marriages for them. This resulted in children, like Longi, who were raised as if they were the officer's own, and later enrolled in the Royal Military Academy. This was shocking to me at first, as it seemed like Beyond was planting his offspring within the Kakin military to control decision-making, reminding me of Pariston and the contracted hunters. Pariston's influence over the Hunter Association, and even the votes he secured during the election arc, came from him placing contracted hunters within the association. Back to Longi's story, she mentioned something crucial. Beyond repeated this process whenever a new prince was born to Nasubi Huigoro, implying that Beyond's goal with these children is tied to the Kakin princes, and indeed what comes next will shock us even further. Longi continues her story, explaining that the ambition of Beyond's children was first to join the royal guard, specifically those protecting the Kakin queens, and later to join the guards of the princes. Most of them achieved this goal, and since their Nen awakened at birth, they had no difficulty passing the physical tests to enter the military academy. As time passed, Longi accidentally discovered that she didn't inherit traits from her supposed father, sparking suspicion and leading her to investigate her parents' past. She eventually found proof of their connection to Beyond, and her parents confessed that Beyond was her biological father. Longi's reaction to the truth wasn't shocking at first, though she was the only one aware of this fact. She didn't care much in the beginning. She believed that Beyond's goal was simply to place his children in key state positions to serve the future king. For a while, she didn't give it much thought, considering herself and her siblings just like any other Kakin soldiers. She also didn't feel a deep emotional connection to her parents, as she had been living in the Kakin military academy since childhood. Even when her parents visited, they spoke about Beyond's goal of uniting the world under Kakin's flag, and Longi accepted this, as it aligned with Kakin's policies. However, everything changed due to an incident involving the second princess, Camilla. In ancient Kakin, centuries ago, there was a custom that stated if a prince failed to become king, they would be buried with someone of the opposite gender to prevent them from becoming a vengeful ghost haunting the current king. For example, if Benjamin failed to become king, he would be buried with a female, and if Princess Camilla failed, she would be buried with a male. Back then, dying with the prince was considered an honor, but since it involved self-sacrifice, this honor was given to the lowest social class in Kakin, a group known as the Fokajimen. Although this ancient law is now obsolete, Kakin still treats the Fokajimen with disdain, restricting them from holding public office, attaining high ranks, or even joining the military. This is similar to how the Eldians were treated in Attack on Titan. In chapter 389, we saw that Princess Camilla opened up opportunities for the Fokajimen to join her personal guard, granted them lands from her own estate, and improved their social standing. What Camilla did here marked the beginning of Longi's discovery of Beyond's true goal, revealed through a character named Makaha. Makaha, also a daughter of Beyond, was in a situation similar to Longi's. Makaha was supposed to join Princess Camilla's guard, but since the princess chose the Fokajiman, Makaha couldn't join. However, despite Makaha's failure to join Camilla's guards, her parents, who spoke of their dream of uniting the world with Beyond and encouraged her to achieve it, remained calm and unconcerned about the situation. This led Makaha to become suspicious and investigate her own parents' background, eventually meeting Longi and learning the full truth about Beyond being her real father. But just months ago, during the initiation of the jar ceremony, when the princes placed their blood and hands inside the jar to receive their Nen beasts, a curse activated on both Longi and Makaha. They learned from a Nen expert that a malignant Nen curse would trigger upon their deaths, aimed at attacking others. It became clear to them that their father's intentions toward Kakin were far from noble. Even worse, according to Longi's research, there were at least 8 others besides her and Makaha who carried the same curse, intended to serve as powerful sacrifices meant to curse and kill their targets. Through her investigation, Longi deduced that since Beyond had at least 10 children and another group of 10 with a weaker curse, his ultimate goal was likely to eliminate the princes of Kakin. As Beyond was unsure how many princes would participate in the succession war, he kept the extra 10 cursed children as backups. The question now arises, how did Beyond place this curse on his children, and what was his motive? The answer to the first question is simple. The reason these children could use Nen from such a young age was due to the curse itself. You could say the curse had the side effect of granting Nen abilities to infants. As for the second question regarding Beyond's motive, Longi explained that Beyond's greed and cunning were at play, and that he likely had a son among the princes. This revelation was the second major shock to readers, raising numerous questions about Beyond's true goals in Kakin. Does he really have a son among the princes? What are his plans for the succession war? Beyond's character shifted in just one chapter, from an adventurer with a similar vibe to Ging Freaksis's, to a villain willing to use any means to achieve his end goal. Undoubtedly, this mystery will eventually be revealed, and I imagine a flashback will show Beyond's relationship with Netero and how their story unfolded to bring about these events. It's interesting to note that the father-son relationship theme has recurred many times in Hunter x Hunter, each time with its own flavor, making it feel fresh and not repetitive. We've seen it with Gon and Killua, Neon Nostrade, Gyro, Netero and Beyond, Morena and Nasubi Hoiguero, and now Longi and Beyond. This arc continues to surprise me, increasing in quality at an insane rate. Even as someone who views the Chimera Ant arc as a storytelling masterpiece and a high mountain to climb, I'm starting to believe that if the Succession War arc continues like this, it could surpass it. And when you remember that Togashi still has the most important arc in his pocket, the Dark Continent arc, you start to wonder if anything can top these two giants. We used to think that Beyond had no role to play, but now Togashi has shocked us. This makes me wonder if we'll retain our current perceptions about other characters, like Ging and Pariston. Will any of us dare to claim that their roles will only be relevant on the Dark Continent, even though they're not on the ship? And what about Gon and Killua? The impact of this chapter has me considering the possibility that even Tonpa might drop by to say hello, with his big belly and all. Just imagine, the grandson of the man who saved humanity from the Chimera Ants could be among the princes. This alone is enough to create a thrilling atmosphere for the upcoming chapters. Imagine Halkenberg being a descendant of Netero. Imagine Tseriadnich, or even Wobel. Forgive my rambling, but this chapter exceeded my expectations. In a separate video, we'll dive into the topic of Beyond's children, but for now, let's return to the events. When Kurapika heard this, he directly asked Queen Oito about the requirements for the princes eligible to participate in the succession war. She answered that the eligible participants are the children of Nasubi's official wives, not necessarily Nasubi's biological children. I can't believe I missed this detail, but the shock. This information has actually been mentioned before. When the king's aide went to Tseriadnich, he said the same exact thing. How did I not catch that earlier? This completely explains what happened with Onior and the third prince Zhang Lei. Now, let's discuss the contract Longi offered Kurapika. The contract is a peace treaty between the 5th princess and Princess Wobel. The contract's details are as follows. From the moment of signing until 9 a.m. on Sunday, 5 days from today, which is Tuesday, both sides agree not to attack or hinder each other, including all members of their entourages. If a messenger from Princess Tubepa enters Wobel's room during this time, the agreement will automatically renew for another week. Longi's ability will activate against anyone who breaks this agreement, with the punishment being a full week of forced Zetsu. This is where the author highlights the risk of Kurapika's ability. Of course, a week of Zetsu is a severe and dangerous penalty, but Kurapika's remark that this condition is easy compared to the cost of his own ability shows just how dangerous Emperor Time is for Kurapika. He's sacrificing days of his life for secondary goals. The first condition was an alliance between the princes. princes. And the second, Kurapika must find Beyond's child among the princes before the fifth princess is eliminated, and before only 2 princes remain. Even if Beyond's child isn't among the princes, and Longi's assumption is wrong, this won't nullify the contract. Now, focus on this. The contract has 2 parts. The first is the alliance or truce, and the second is Kurapika finding Beyond's child among the princes. There is also a feature in Longi's ability called the bonus. This feature allows Kurapika to use Longi's ability one time. The agreement between them is that Kurapika will continue searching for Beyond's child, even if the 5th princess nullifies this contract. The bonus feature remains a bit unclear. Initially, Longi mentioned that she can lend her ability to the person she makes a contract with, but when she brought up the bonus, she talked about her primary ability, the Moonlight Decree. So it seems Longi possesses several abilities, similar to Kite's clown, and the main ability that Kurapika obtained isn't fully clear yet. We'll have to wait for the official translation and the next chapter. Anyway, Kurapika didn't intend to attack anyone in the succession war. His role is still defensive, so this alliance suits him perfectly. It was his goal from the start. Meanwhile, the 5th princess instructed her guards to form an alliance with Kurapika at any cost, as the person with the predator ability is still after her, and she needs to be able to use and benefit from her Nen beast. Another key point in this alliance. When they left the room, Yurakov, a soldier from the 1st prince's army, noted a slight change in Kurapika's aura compared to before. Is it possible that Bill signed the contract, or that the queen signed it instead of Kurapika? Perhaps Kurapika is trying to deceive the soldiers of the 1st and 7th princes. Yurakov himself is now confused. He doesn't know if Longi is the silent majority assassin, or if she activated her ability on Kurapika. He's unsure whether Kurapika could identify that she was the one behind the silent majority. He only sees that Kurapika is succeeding in his goal and strengthening the weaker princes, but he can't stop him. However, Baphoemania's reaction was different, as if he figured out part of what happened in the room. We recall that Longi mentioned that around 30 years ago, Beyond began his plan to have children. This means Beyond's children among the prince's guards are around Baphoemania's age, and he might also be one of Beyond's children, cursed. What evidence do we have for this? It's not strong, but we saw Longi crying after making the decision to kill Beyond's child, feeling used by her father for this. Baphoemania also chose to sympathize with Queen Oito because she cried and tried to save Princess Momose, even though Momose wasn't her daughter. It seems Togashi is digging in this direction, and I think soon everything will become clearer. But the key point right now is that Beyond's children might be present in most of the other princes' rooms. The first thing that comes to mind is Tserednich's guards, as they're all under 30 years old. Is one of them hiding their use of Nen? I don't know. Will this affect Morena's plan? I don't know. After this chapter, it's impossible to predict anything, and all possibilities are open, especially with the final dialogue between Kanzai and Beyond Netero. This conversation was both fascinating and mysterious to me. It was fascinating when Beyond told Kanzai, "I can cut your head off with this book," and we all know he was serious and may be capable of doing it. What I loved even more was Kanzai's reaction. The tiger didn't flinch or show fear, maintaining the Joninshin's reputation. The mysterious part was when the chapter ended, and we learned that Beyond wanted to speak with someone and asked Kanzai to agree to bring that person to him. Who is that person, and what does Beyond want from them? We don't know. Could it be that he wants to speak with his child among the princes if Longi's assumption is correct? Could it be the king, or perhaps Longi herself? Or maybe he wants to bring someone who holds the key to activating these curses? My head is spinning from all the possibilities. We've entered a stage where we can no longer predict anything about the future. I'll say it again. Despite this chapter being mostly dialogue between Kurapika, Longi, Kanzai, and Beyond, it's one of the best things I've ever read. This chapter gave me the same thrill as the chapters where Don Freaks was first mentioned, Crollo versus Hisoka, and the death of the 10th princess, Kacho. Thank you, Togashi, for this chapter. You continue to prove to me that this story is on a completely different level from other stories, and that this arc will be something immortalized in history for years to come. In the next chapter, according to the editor, the princes will move towards Senritsu, and we are likely to see the 4th prince, who was eager to meet. With the possibility of him being Beyond's son, other shocking events are expected. Should we focus on the princes, Kurapika, the spiders, Hisoka, the mafia, the Joninshin, the Zoldycks, or Beyond and his current plan? It seems like there are many intriguing storylines to follow.